Hello and welcome back to the COMFOCUS podcast. In this series, we dive into COMFOCUS, a starting community within the food consumer science domain. My name is Irene Rijmakers, project manager of COMFOCUS and your host of this podcast. Today, in our second episode, we are diving into the topic of emerging trends in food consumer science and the proposed new way of working by COMFOCUS. To guide this discussion, I am joined by our project partners. Welcome. So, let's start by looking at the bigger picture. What are, according to you, the key trends shaping the food consumer science today?
Yeah, the key trend shaping the science field is, I think we all realize, many people realize, we need to eat healthier, more sustainably. That's not easy, and consumers cannot do this alone. I think the whole food system needs to change, but still, we really need to understand consumers. What steps are they willing to take or able to take? Are they motivated? How to motivate them? And how does their kind of food environment kind of align with all these new developments, like you can eat healthy and sustainably? And the thing is that consumer behavior is highly context dependent. So it's not possible if you do a study in Greece to say, okay, these results you can also just apply to another country like Germany or so. So that doesn't work like that. So we really, if you really want to make an impact and make sure that people make these big changes that are necessary, then we need to work together to have better understanding.
So we need to focus on that bigger picture and how the individual behavior is affected by that bigger picture. And I think the second important trend is the data science potential. So data science, of course, has moved really forward. It's there to stay. In many fields, you see that data science and data integration has progressed considerably, not so much in the food consumer science area. So that's, I think, the second one. How can we build those big data in the food consumer science behavior that researchers can benefit from and policy makers can benefit to get a better focus on what drives consumer behavior? And I think that's the second important one. How can we make sure that such ontology or such knowledge system is also linked to other data intense structures like food on?
I think another key trend has to do with these emerging technologies that allows for new types of research. So I think an interesting one is virtual reality, where, for example, supermarkets or other food environments can be simulated or built in a virtual manner, and you can use that to conduct experiments, for example. I think another interesting trend has to do with the social media. So one of the tasks within our project was focused on text mining. So can we scrape text from social media or from websites to get more insight in what people do and think? I think another trend in relation to this is AI, artificial intelligence, and all the opportunities that are there with AI. Yeah, I think these more or less are the key trends that we are facing.
In COMFOCUS, a new way of working is proposed. What is this new way of working about, and could you explain this?
Yeah, I think that's the more difficult question, because that impact materializes over time, of course. So we're asking in this project for more discipline, essentially, among food consumer researchers. And that will be a huge impact. So sometimes we take the analogy and say, well, what if natural sciences would not have harmonized measures and they would work together? Would we ever end up on the moon? Because in natural sciences, they are much ahead. They already have harmonized measures. We don't have that in food consumer science or social sciences in general. So I think if we can make this happen, that will be the largest impact, that we can truly interlink data, that we can look at the bigger picture.
So within the project, we created a narrative. We call it the Brian and Betty narrative. And Brian is a researcher that is doing research in the, let's say, the old-fashioned way. And Betty is a researcher that is doing research in the way that we envisioned within the COMFOCUS project. So take, for example, Betty is going to do a study on food neophobia. Normally as a researcher, what are you going to do? You start by scanning the literature, and then you build your own experiment or your own questionnaire, and you do it all by yourself. In our new ways of working, what we envision there is that Betty doesn't necessarily have to start from scratch, but she can go to the knowledge platform as the access point, where she can find other data sets that are already conducted or collected within her research context. She can contact fellow researchers that are doing the same. She can make use of the existing data that can be used to, for example, to create new hypotheses, to build on this, and to, for example, to build a new experiment. And based on the outcomes of this experiment, she can integrate that with the data that's already there. So she really builds on existing data and builds knowledge in that sense.
What I really liked in this project, that we had these early career researchers. They could visit another country, another research group, and use their equipment and work with them on research projects. And I thought that was really a new way of working, because they were short visits, like 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes 4 weeks. But that they really liked that. They really were excited to work with other experts, to go abroad, and that brought a lot of energy and new ideas. And I still have contact with these, several of these early career researchers. We try to write a paper, and I think that's important for young scientists also, to go abroad and to start these collaborative projects. And I hope then we can continue with that type of funding and opportunities.
You are talking about the development of harmonized measures and protocols within COMFOCUS, and about the development of new tools. Could you give an overview of these harmonized measures and protocols and new tools?
We have been working on new tools, for example, on how to integrate data and visualize data. And I think we made some progress there, but we're still in early stages, I would say. And an important contribution, I think, is that we really started to think about harmonization. Like, how do we measure certain things? Like, if you for eye tracking, how long does someone look at a certain logo at a food product?
We have a questionnaire tool that can be used to create questionnaires. We have a dataset search tool that can be used to search for data. So people can type in a keyword, and then they find all datasets related to a certain keyword. So, for example, if I want to get all the datasets that are related to consumer attitudes towards bananas, then I just type in attitude and bananas, and then I get all the relevant data.
So we've developed a set of digital services around that big data infrastructure. I think that's a very important one. And also importantly, because if you go to those bigger data-driven studies, there are a lot of ethical issues. So there's a lot of thought about responsible research and innovation. So we also defined the guidelines for ethics, responsible research, innovation, and fair data principles that we should adhere to in those circumstances. So I think that's the most important ones.
This is impressive to hear, and I'm aware of the challenges that we have encountered along the way or in our journey. What were, according to you, the main challenges that the project faced, and how did we overcome these?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, which was much bigger than I anticipated, is the communication. Is the communication between disciplines, so between people more interested in the content, in the content domain of food consumer science, often psychologists or anthropologists or people with a social science background often, and the data scientists who see data as numbers. And we've had major challenges making these people sort of come to a single language that would be effective for both. And there's been a lot of confusion there. I think another big challenge is that issue we discussed on how do you handle languages, so translations of measures, but also how do you handle cultural differences, so differences in eating culture. So how likely is it that these measures translate one-to-one?
Another challenge that we encountered that has to do with the researchers in the open calls. So how can you really motivate these research fellows or make them enthusiastic to do research, not only for their own study or for their own thesis, but also for how do you say, creating a knowledge base for the whole community. So in a practical way, we saw that it was difficult to motivate consumers to upload their data, to do that in the right format, to make use of the harmonized measures that we offered them. So that was really a challenge. So we think that where we should pay attention to is what can really be the added value for an individual researcher to contribute to the research community as a whole.
I think an important challenge was for me also to work with data scientists, and they really speak another language. That's my experience, and they often struggle to understand how we as consumer scientists kind of look at our field, what our starting points are. But at the same time, we also, as consumer scientists, we do not always know how they approach their work. So we really need to learn to bridge that gap. That took a lot of time and effort within the COMFOCUS, but that's for me an important lesson for the future. I think we still need each other because data is so important. We get bigger data sets. We need to work together to make sense of that data. So if we really want to truly move forward, we need to learn to work together and collaborate, and also with other disciplines. I think that's a challenge, but also an opportunity.
Today, we talked about opportunities and challenges within the food consumer science domain. What opportunities do you think lie ahead for future innovations?
I think what we did in the open call, that we offered people the chance to visit research facilities across Europe. I think that's really an opportunity there for research facilities to open their doors for people from outside. I'm aware that it's a bit dependent upon funding, so people need funding to do so. But I think there's really an opportunity there. There's also an opportunity in creating a sense of community and we can do that with offering network activities, offering conferences, courses, trainings, etc.
And it's all very important, but that's something you have to take into account. And I think we need projects like COMFOCUS who think about that, we should really take into account to make it easy for researchers, or easy, that it's not a burden, but you really want to innovate in your research. And if there's too much administrative burden, it will slow down your whole research process. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, how can we make sure that if we do consumer research, that it really adds to the max of the knowledge that's already there? Because we bother people with asking them questions, with engaging them in research. So that's an important one. And the second one is that I think a major challenge ahead is to think of new measures that don't necessarily need that communication. So in big data, if we could collect behavioral data more accurately, so we could actually measure how many people have walked, or how many they've eaten, or how often they've stopped at a cafe. If we can do that from, let's say, behavioral data, so the smartwatches or the video cameras or things like that, then we don't even need to interfere with the individual consumers, and we don't have that subjectivity of measures.
Thank you for joining me today in the second COMFOCUS podcast episode. If you would like to learn more about COMFOCUS and to make use of the harmonized measures and protocols and the tools that we have developed, please visit our website at comfocus.eu. In our next and final episodes, we will talk about the technologies that were part of COMFOCUS and the added value that these technologies have in measuring food consumption behavior. So stay tuned for that final episode.